of Virginia. Good to have you with us, Mr. Chairman.
Good to be with you, Lou, and your viewers.
Well, let's start out with Breitbart.com and reporter Matthew Boyle saying point blank that you are comfortable, satisfied with, or receptive to the idea of the Give 8 Senate immigration plan, which a lot of people thought was dead on arrival. What's going on?
Well, it is dead on arrival in the House, Lou. It is something that I do not support. In fact, I've been working all year long, as you know, to do a step-by-step approach, to do enforcement first, to do legal reform, and then find an appropriate legal status for people who are not lawfully here. The Senate bill gives that legal status first and then says, over the years, we will go ahead and secure the border, do E-Verify, do an entry-exit visa system, and so on. And that's what happened in 1986. We had an easy pathway to citizenship, and then we had no enforcement. We still don't have the enforcement. Then the Senate bill also gives that pathway to citizenship a special pathway that people who are not lawfully here would get, where people who have gone through the process legally for generations have not gotten. So we have lots of problems with the Senate bill, and we are doing it very differently in the House. The Speaker has made it clear he will not take up the Senate bill in the House, and I strongly agree with him.
Apparently, this comes up because one of your aides said to Mr. Boyle that you would be willing to go into conference with the Senate with the presumption that they would be representing the Gang of Eight legislation in that conference, and would, as Senator Schumer has made clear, he would be delighted to be in conference with the House, where apparently he thinks he can take advantage of less talented and gifted legislators than himself.
Well, I won't comment on Senator Schumer's impression of the House or of himself, but I will say this, that the Speaker has made it very clear, and I think the overwhelming majority of Republicans in the House agree, that we're not going to go into conference with the Senate unless a bill can be introduced that a majority of House Republicans can support. I don't see anything remotely like the Senate bill as something House Republicans should support. 70% of the Democrats in the Senate voted against the Senate bill, and I guarantee you that if the Senate bill were brought to the floor of the House today, 90% or more of House Republicans would vote against it. So we're taking a very different approach to this, and I think the first thing is for the House to produce their work in these three areas and let the public who we represent judge that, and let the world see that Republicans in the House have great ideas for immigration reform, to grow our economy, to control our borders, to prevent illegal aliens from entering into our country. And I think they'll see a very clear contrast between the House bill and the Senate bill.
I want to be very clear on a number of things. First, I think your approach is exactly the correct approach, if I can say that. I know that it amounts to nothing, but I do believe absolutely that you have chosen the absolute correct path to succeeding in passing immigration reform and border security legislation. I also think that the Republican Party has proved itself capable of absolutely screwing up opportunities with abandon. And one hopes, for the sake of millions of illegal immigrants and for the country, that this is not one such period. But we're also hearing that some of the big money folks want the Gang of Eight, that the Senate and the President will muscle their way through conference. And so I guess what I would ask you is, would it not be more rational and perhaps more effective to begin with the first bill in conference with the Senate, that bill being border security or SAFE Act, whatever it might be, and then move toward immigration reform with a path to legalization?
Well, we are absolutely insistent in the House that not only do you have to do the border enforcement and the interior enforcement and the employment verification and the border, the entry-exit visa system, but that they have to be in place before any kind of legal status. And as I said, we don't support a special pathway to citizenship, but any legal status would be granted to people who are not lawfully here because of the overwhelming concern on our side that that would lead to another wave of illegal immigration. So yes, I think the most important thing now is to produce the legislation that shows the right way to do it. And by the way, thank you for your comment. The Washington Post released a poll last week that showed that by a 53 to 31 margin, the American people agree that the step-by-step approach, individual bills, is what they prefer over the comprehensive bill that passed through the Senate, and which we have criticized for many, many flaws. That doesn't mean we don't want to do immigration reform. It does mean we do not want to do anything remotely like the Senate bill. But the first step is to get the bills out of the House, then to have a determination made of whether it would even be worthwhile having any discussion with the Senate. If they're willing to move away from their position, that may be possible. But right now, it's up to the House to show the right way to enforce the borders, to do the legal reforms that would help to grow our economy and create more American jobs, and then we can talk about what's appropriate with regard to people who are not lawfully here. But in my opinion, the House is not going to do anything like the Senate's pathway to citizenship.
So am I hearing you correctly that there would be the first conference would be on border security, interior security, E-Verify, and the exit visas?
Well, I think the first thing is that once legislation is produced, the Speaker and others in our leadership would gauge the support in the Republican conference in the House for what the next step would be. And usually there's a lot of discussion with the leaders in the Senate and so on about whether there is any merit to having a conference. So in my opinion, the most important thing for us to do is pass the legislation through the House, show the right way to do it, see what the American people's response to that is. So far, we're getting a very good response to it. And if that continues, then I think maybe the Senate will come around to the point of view that it shouldn't be done the way they're doing it.
Congressman, we thank you for being here. Mr. Chairman, good luck. You've got quite a challenge in front of you, as you well know. That's it for tonight. General